Okay, in task 2 we are supposed to record the names of the people that are going on the outing, right? So what we have to do is we have to record the names. We have to store the names of all the people that are going on the outing, and to store all the names we would need something like an array, because an array can hold multiple values. So we can put those values inside the array, right? So we're going to have an array which can hold the names of the people, like John is going, or let's say Elvis is going on the trip, right? So we're going to put in names. We're going to fill names into this array, right? Okay. Because we have multiple values, that's why an array is a better data structure to hold names of all the people going on the outing, and also the amount that is going to be paid by these people, right? And remember, some of these people are going to be helpers also, right? So not everybody is going to be paying an amount, but because we have to store the amount that is being paid by all the people, right, we're going to have to store multiple values of the amount also, right? So we're going to have to store multiple values of the amount also. So somebody paid 75, another person paid $75, another person paid $75, but then we're going to have some helpers also, right? And the helpers will have paid nothing, right? All the other senior citizens would have paid the same amount, but let's say these were the slots where in these elements we had stored the amounts that the helpers had paid, right? And the helpers would end up paying nothing, right? So the helpers are paying nothing, right? So we would need to set up another array where we are going to store the amounts that are being paid, right? So to store the amounts paid by all the people, we are going to use an array data structure. Okay, so array is a very useful data structure because it can hold multiple values of the same data type, and we can see these are all the same data type, right? In this array we have a name, we have another name, we'll have other names also. So all the data types are going to be string values, right? Names are strings, right? So all the elements within the array are going to hold string values, and out here we can see that the array is holding integer values, right? The array is holding integer values. I think this is where the amount paid is going to be calculated. In fact, the amount paid is going to be 75.00. So maybe in this case it's not integer values that are being held here, it is real values, right? Well, we'll take a look at the question and see how we have declared this array, right? What is the data type of this array? What kind of data is this array going to hold? Okay, and the data that this array is going to hold is most likely going to be string, right? For names the data type has to be string, and for the amount paid, I think it should be preferably real data type rather than integer, right? Okay, so now we understand, right? We have to store the names and the amount paid by people going on the trip, right? And then he says that if there are spare places on the coach, how do we know that there are spare places on the coach? For that we are going to be taking help from this table, right? Okay. For example, if the number of senior citizens that were going on the trip were 11, right? So 11 senior citizens were going on the trip, which basically meant what? Which meant that you add 2 helpers, and that makes a total of 13 people that are going on the trip. Now in this group we can have 12 to 16 people, right? So the maximum number of people that can go in this group is 16, and the number of people that are going in our trip is 13, right? As per this example, right? We've just used some random value. We've said that 11 people would be going, so there will be 2 helpers, and now we have 13 people in total. The maximum size of this group can be 16 people, right? So which means what? Which means 16 minus 13, we have 3 spare seats. We have 3 spare seats in the coach, right? Because so we have 3 spare seats in the coach or in the bus, right? So these 3 spare seats can be filled. So extra people can be added, right? So extra people can be added because there's still room for 3 people, so we can have extra people added to this group before this group goes out on the trip, right? So that is what he's saying. First we have to find out if there are spare places on the coach. If there are spaces, if there are spare places on the coach, only then extra people can be added, and these extra people are going to be charged the same price as the other senior citizens, right? So whatever cost per person was already calculated in task 1, right? Remember, we calculated the cost per person in task 1. We calculated the cost per person in task 1, right? That cost which we've already calculated is the cost that these new extra people will have to pay also. So we are not going to do any recalculations now. The cost per person that was already calculated in task 1 is the cost that these new extra people are going to pay also. Okay, so these new extra people are charged the same price as the other senior citizens. Now calculate the total amount of money collected. So including these extra people that have been added, we have to calculate the total amount of money that has been collected for this trip. And finally we have to print out the list of people that are going out on this trip. Okay, so this is our solution in pseudocode, right? And let's take a look at what we've done. The first few lines here, the first few lines that you see, these are the declarations. This is where I have declared the variables, and you can see I have declared 2 arrays. One array I have declared to store the names of the people, and this is what I have written here, right? Declare names 1 to 39 string, right? Okay, remember declare is a keyword, right? This is just to provide information that there is going to be a variable declaration, right? We are going to do a variable declaration, and for that we have used this keyword, right? Now this is the name of our array, right? So this is the identifier. We can call the name of the array is going to be called the identifier. The name of a variable is also called the identifier. The name of the array is also called the identifier, right? So this is the identifier. Names is the identifier of our array. This array has the lower bound of 1. This is the lower bound. Meaning what? Meaning if this is our array, right, then this starting element is element number 1. This is the lower bound, and the final element, the upper bound, right, the final element in the array is going to be element number 39, right? That is what the upper bound is telling us. So we have so many elements, or you can say so many boxes inside, but boxes is not the appropriate term. We call these elements, okay? So these boxes that you have are called elements, right? So the starting element would be element number 1, and the final element in the array is going to be element number 39. That is the information which is being provided here. So we have element number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up till 39 in this array, and this array is identified by names. This array is identified by names. So that is the name of this array, right? And this array is going to be holding string values. So this is the data type. This is the data type, right, that is going to be held within the array. Okay, let's quickly take a look at the declaration of the next array that we have here. This next array that we have here is what? Declare amount paid 1 to 39 integer. Okay, I think this should not be integer. Okay, so we're going to change this from integer. Instead of integer, this should be real. Okay, and I'm saying this should be real because, you know, amount paid will basically be an array into which we are going to be storing the cost per person, right? The senior citizens cost per person that was calculated in task 1. And if you remember, you know, that that cost per person was real, right? If you remember that our solution in task 1 had cost per person declared as real. So basically the amount paid by senior citizens which is going to be stored in this array is going to be real. So we'll have something like this, right? 53.33, 53.33, that's the amount that the senior citizen is going to pay. So this data type should be real instead of integer. So we're going to change this, right? So this should not be integer, rather this should be real. Okay. Okay, now quickly, this is the keyword, right? Telling us that there is going to be a declaration ahead, right? Some variable is going to be declared. The identifier of this array is amount paid. So that's the name of the array, or that's the identifier of the array. This is the lower bound and this is the upper bound of the array, meaning the starting element is 1 and the final element in the array is going to be element number 39. And this array is going to be holding real data. Okay, so data type that is going to be held within this array is going to be real. Okay, and then on this line we have declared two simple variables, right? We've declared spare seats. Remember, we have to calculate how many spare seats are left in the group, and then we have to calculate the extra people that can be added, right? So for example, we just said, you know, that 13 people were going on the trip, whereas the maximum number of people that could go was 16, right? So we had 16 minus 13 equals 3 spare seats, right? And now we can take 3 extra people with us, right? So that's the concept that we are going to be using within this algorithm, right? Okay, this solution, right? And finally, you can see that I have also declared total amount paid, right? In total amount paid, we are going to do the total of all the, see, we just created an array called amount paid, right? This was the array called amount paid, in which for each person the amount he paid was entered into this array, right? That's what we said, right? The cost per person that was going to be paid by senior citizens was entered here. The total amount paid will actually calculate, will add up all these amounts, and that value will be stored in the total amount paid, right? So that is what total amount paid is going to hold. Okay. We have initialized total amount paid to 0 here, right? 0.0, right? Because total amount paid is a real number, so we've initialized it to 0.0, not 0 but 0.0. It is important to show the fraction part, right? The decimal part. Okay, and then what have we done here? First thing that we are doing here is we are calculating the spare seats. Okay, remember, the number of people going on the trip were calculated in task 1. This was what we had already calculated in task 1, because in task 1 the user had input senior citizens, right? This was input by the user, and based on these number of senior citizens we added the helpers, right, to determine how many people were going on the trip, right? So we had calculated the number of people in task 1. We are using that same number of people that was input in task that was calculated in task 1. And so what we are saying here is that if the number of people from task 1 were between 12 and 16, if the number of people from task 1, if the variable people has a value between 12 and 16, right, people should be greater than equal to 12, and at the same time people must be less than equal to 16. It can't be more than that, right? So this is what we are saying, people must be between 12 and 16. If that is the value that our variable people has, then we come inside this if condition, and then the spare seats are calculated. because in this group the maximum number of people that can go is 16, right? So that is what we are doing. 16 minus people, that would give us our spare seats, right? Which is exactly what we are doing here, right? 13 people were going and we had 16 maximum, right? So 16 minus 13 would give us 3 spare seats. That is exactly what we are doing on this instruction. We are calculating the spare seats by using the equation 16 minus the people that are going on the trip. Okay, what if the number of people, this variable people, had a value between 17 and 26? What if this variable people had a value between 17 and 26? If that was the case, the maximum number of people that can go on this trip is 26, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to calculate our spare seats by subtracting the number of people going on the trip from 26. What if so this is when number of people are between 17 and 26, and you should realize between 17 and 26 people can be somewhere like, we can have 19 people going, right? And so we have 19 people that are ready to go on the trip, right? Whereas the maximum capacity is what? 26. So in this case 26 minus 19 would be 7 spare seats, right? So we have a maximum capacity of 26. So far only 19 people have agreed to go, which means what? 26 minus 19, we have 7 spare seats, and that is exactly what we are doing here. We are calculating the spare seats. And in case of people between 27 and 39, right? This is the biggest group. This is the largest group that can go. In that case, spare seats are calculated using this formula, right? 39 minus people. Okay, so so this code in pink is basically being used to calculate the number of spare seats that we have on the bus, right? Okay, once we have calculated the number of spare seats, this is the message that we are showing, right? We are doing an output showing that we are first printing the value of spare seats, right, which is our variable, right? So whatever value is held within this variable is going to tell us how many spare seats are available. So first we are printing the value of the variable, and then we are printing this message alongside. These many spare seats are available. For example, spare seats, our variable spare seats has a value of 3 inside, right? And then in this case the message that will be printed on the screen is 3 spare seats are available, right? 3 spare seats are available. That will be the message that is going to be shown on the screen, because what we are doing here is first we are printing the value of the variable. So first this 3 is going to be printed, and then this remaining message is going to be printed, then this remaining message is going to be printed on the screen, right? Okay, now once we've printed this message, we also have another prompt. In this prompt we are asking the user to enter number of extra people that are interested in going on the trip, right? So we have 3 spare seats. Are there any extra people interested on going on the trip, right? So that's the output statement that we've made, right? That's the prompt, right? This is our prompt. This is asking the user to enter the number of extra people that may be interested in going on the trip, and then we take the input from the user. So the user is going to provide some value which is going to be stored in this variable extra people. So we've taken the input of the number of people interested in going on the trip from the user, right? So the user is going to tell us how many more people have approached us asking to go out on the trip, right? So that number of people, the extra people that are interested in going on the trip, has been entered by the user. Okay, let me just scroll a little bit. What I've done here is, see in our example, for example, in this case we have said that for example we have 3 spare seats only, for example. Okay, what if we have 3 spare seats? Can we take 4 extra people with us? Can we take 4 extra people with us when we have 3 spare seats only? And that cannot be allowed, right? Because the maximum number of extra people that can go is 3 extra people, right? Because we only have capacity for 3 in our bus, right? So that is why we are doing validation here. That is why we are doing validation. So this is validation. We are trying to validate the number of extra people that have been entered by the user. So we are saying while extra people that have been entered, that have been input, are more than the spare seats, if they are greater than the spare seats, there is something wrong, right? The number of extra people interested in going out on the trip is more than the spare seats. Then do what? Then you enter this loop, output this message, extra people to be accommodated, meaning extra people that can go out on the trip cannot be more than, in our example, so this value of spare seats, right? In our example, this is going to be 3, right? So extra people that can go out on the trip cannot be more than 3, right? For example, this is just an example value. Output re-enter number of extra people that are going. So what we are saying is that the maximum number of people that can go out on the trip is 3. So that and the extra people that have been input by the user is somehow more than 3. That is why we are asking the user to re-enter the number of extra people that are going out on the trip. And so the user is going to be made to once again enter the amount of the extra people that are going on the trip. And when this new value has been entered, then this new value needs to be checked again. So then the control is transferred back to the top of the loop, and once again this condition is evaluated. Are the new extra people more than spare seats? If the new value of extra people that was input by the user is still more than spare seats, then this loop will run again. So this loop will keep running until a wrong value of extra people is going to be, if the user is going to keep entering a wrong value, then this loop is going to keep running, meaning we are going to be stuck inside the loop. Only when the user provides a good value, a valid value, meaning if we have 3 spare seats available to us, then if a user provides something like 3 extra people are going on the trip, then this is fine. Or the user provides a value like 2, this is fine. Or a user provides a value like 1, this is fine. Or a user provides a value like 0, this is fine too. But if a user provides a value like 4, this will make the loop run once again. If a user provides a value like 5, we will still be stuck in the loop. If a user provides a value like 6, we will still be stuck in the loop. So in case of this example, it has to be 3 or less than 3 people, extra people that can go out on the trip. So this is where we are doing validation, right? Once the number of extra people have been validated, meaning once the user has provided a valid value for extra people, then we come to this next step. In the next step, we are calculating the updated number of people, right? And the updated number of people include what? The people that were already willing to go on the trip, right? This was calculated in task 1, right? People was calculated in task 1. And now these extra people that have just been input, together the people that were going in task 1 and these extra people make up the new number of people that are now willing to go on the trip. So we have calculated the updated people, right? So previously 13 people were going on the trip, and now 2 more extra people have joined. 2 extra people have joined. So in this case, we'll have how many? We'll have 15 people going on the trip. So this will be the updated value. This will be the updated value. Updated people, right? So we are using a variable updated people to hold the number of people, to store the value of the number of people, that the number of updated people that are going on the trip. Okay, once we've calculated the number of updated people going on the trip, now we are ready to input details about these users. So we have set up a loop, and this is a for loop, right? And the for loop is being controlled by this count variable. So count has an initial value of 1, and count will have count will have the final value equal to updated people, right? Equal to updated people. So for example, if the number of updated people is 15, right? This is the number of updated people. Then the loop that we are setting up in this case will be something like for count is equal to 1 to 15, right? Next, so the upper limit of the loop is being set by updated people that we just calculated on the previous step. So this loop will run as many times as we have the number of updated people. Each time the loop runs, we show a prompt. Output enter name of people going on the trip. Then once the prompt has been shown, we take input from the user, right? And this input is critical because we are taking an input into the array. Remember, whenever you take input in the array, you must mention the box number. Remember, names is our array. So we can't simply do input names. So you should remember that we set up an array called names, right? This was the identifier of the array. And in this array we were going to store string values, right? And we said that the starting element of this array is 1 and the final element is 39, right? Starting element is 1 and the final element is 39. So in this array we want to fill up values. Now when we want to fill up values, we can't simply write something like this, because this means what? Input a value into names, and names has so many elements, right? It has so many elements. Which one of these elements do you want to input this value in? The user is going to give us a value through this command, right? Input will ask the user to type a value. That value has to be stored into names, right? But which box or which element of names, right? Which box or which element of names? You have to specify the element, right? And in this case we are going to specify count as the index, right? So count is going to tell us, count is going to act as the index. Index means the box number or the element number into which this value that the user is providing, this value that the user is going to provide will be stored in this array names, and this index or this box number in the array or the element number in the array. For example, initially the value of count is going to be 1, right? When the loop starts, the value is going to be 1. So then this equation, input names count, becomes what? Input names 1, because the value of count is 1 in the beginning. Then this loop runs again, right? When this loop runs the second time, the value of count becomes equals to 2. So then in that case, input names count becomes input names 2. So we will automatically be entering a value here. Next time the loop runs, the value of count becomes 3. In that case, our equation, this equation, count equals 3. So this value here will become 3. So this time this input that is being received from the user is going to be stored into names 3, which is this box, right? So that's how this loop is going to work. Each time the value of count is going to change, it is going to be incremented. So the box number each time is going to change also. Previously it was 2, now it has become 3, then it is going to become 4, then it is going to become 5, so on and so forth. So each time the value here is going to change, and each time will be moving to a new box in the array, and the new input that the user will be giving will be added to this new element of the array. So that is what we are doing. We've input the value, we've used count as the index, and this is where the user is going to input the name of the person, right? So we are going to be filling something like John, Elvis, David, right? These are the people going on the trip, right? And then we have another prompt saying saying that enter amount paid by this person. So we have another array. Remember, we had another array. Let me quickly clean up some space. Okay, so we had another array, right? We had another array declared which was called amount paid, right? This was also an array. This time, when count equals 1, we entered the name of the person, right? John, for example. And when count equals 1, we are also inputting the amount paid. So let's say the amount paid was, cost per person was 53.33. So that amount has been stored here in this array, right? Amount paid. So basically this box 1 here corresponds to John, right? This is where the name of John is stored, and this amount 1 is, so this amount in amount paid, this amount stored in amount paid in box number 1 is basically the amount that has been paid by John, right? So in the first element of the amount paid array, we are storing the amount paid by the person who is stored in the first element of the names array. So John and the amount that John paid. In the second element of the names array, Elvis, and in the second element of the amount paid array, amount paid by Elvis. In the third element of the names array, David, and in the third element of the amount paid array, the amount that was paid by Davis, right? So these are corresponding. You can think there is a logical link here, right? First the name of the person is input, then the amount he paid is input in the other array. Okay, and finally how is the total amount being calculated? Remember, total is calculated using the equation total equals total plus x, right? So that is a standard equation for calculating the total, and in this case the total of this variable x is being calculated, right? So, and in our example we want to calculate the total of the amount paid, right, by the senior citizens, and the amount paid is stored in an array, right? So this is an array, and what we want to do is we want to calculate the total amount paid, right? So total amount paid is going to be total amount paid, just going by this formula, right? Total amount paid is going to be equal to total amount paid plus this array, right? This array and the corresponding index of the array. So here's what's going to happen. When this loop runs the first time, count is equal to 1, then total amount paid will be equal to total amount paid plus amount paid 1, because count is equal to 1. So in our array amount paid, the value lying in the first element, right, amount paid 1, because count is equal to 1 right now when the loop is running the first time. So that value lying in this element is going to be added to our total, right? Next time the loop runs, value of count becomes 2, so total amount paid will be equal to total amount paid plus amount paid 2, because count is equal to 2 right now. So whatever value is stored in this element of this array, amount paid, will be added to our total. So this way we are going to loop through the array. Each time the value of count is going to change, and each time the box corresponding to that value of count, from that box the amount will be picked up, right, and it will be added to our total, right? So that's how the total is going to be calculated. Finally, what we have done here is we have output the names of the people going out on the trip, and we should have also added the amount paid by these people. So maybe we should change this bit of code. So I'm going to change this piece of code by changing the for loop, right? So this message stays the same, right, but this for loop is what I'm going to change. So I'm going to say for count is equal to 1 to updated people, 1 to updated people, we are going to output names of the people, and we're also going to output the amount paid by the person, right? So both the things need to be output. So amount paid count, this is count, right? Next, so this is what the for loop should look like instead of this, right? So the first time the loop runs, count will be equal to 1, which means what? Output names 1, because count is equal to 1, and output amount paid 1. So from names array whatever is lying in the first element, right, from the names array, and also from the amount paid array, whatever is lying in the first box. When count is equal to 1, output names 1 and output amount paid 1, right? So these values are going to be output. Next time the loop runs, count equals 2, right? The value of count changes to 2. So this time output names 2 instead of 1, output names 2 because count is now equal to 2, and output amount paid 2, right? So this time names 2 and amount paid 2. Whatever value is stored in these elements of the array is going to be output. Next time the loop runs, count becomes equals to 3. So output names 3, right? Instead of 2, output names 3 and output amount paid 3 also, right? So this time names 3 and amount paid 3. Whatever value is stored in these elements is going to be output. So this is how this is going to work. This loop will keep running until until count reaches its maximum value, and till that time we are going to be doing outputs, right? And each time the output is done, the box number equals the value of count, right? So amount names 1, then amount names 2, then amount names 3. The value of count keeps changing, so we are going to be outputting values from the corresponding element in the array. So this finishes task 2.